It's a longie, but hopefully it's a goodie. Here we go. Let's start with this one. This one is called The Games That Scared Me Away. I had my first opportunity to play D&D my freshman year of college. I dropped in on the campus tabletop club and I was quite anxious. I was the only girl in the room. Everyone seemed to have known each other or clicked well, but I wanted to branch out of my comfort zone. The first night went well. We played a very quick heist one-shot where we made a character with one flaw and one interesting trait. Through unfortunate roles and circumstances, we had a TPK, but it was a fun time. I was invited afterwards to join a Pathfinder campaign that a few of the members were going to start up for the new semester, so I scheduled a time to meet with the DM and create my first full-fledged character. Now the DM was kind of eccentric, a little whack if you will, but very excited to help me make my first character. I thought he was just goofy and really into the game. God, I wish I picked up on all the red flags that would become. He first asked me what kind of race I'd like to play as. I'd always been drawn to tiefling characters because I like the aesthetic. His eyes lit up at that for some reason. Then he asked what class I'd like, if I'd liked to be primarily support or a tank, what have you. I didn't want to get overwhelmed my first game and thought support might be nice. I could watch how combat worked while just keeping everyone going and buffed. I said, let's try Bard. The grin that crept on his face. He immediately started talking about how saucy that would be, how my character would be so flirty and fun. I expressed some discomfort in having my character immediately fall into the horny bard category, and I had seen memed so much on, but he laughed and waved it off, saying that he was a theatre kid in high school. Everyone was super horny and making out backstage all the time. It just comes with the environment. Being a new player and wanting to fit in, I pushed down my discomfort and thought, okay, I'll play her as a joke character, I guess. For a while it was fine. I got to play her as a dancer, lyre player who was part of travelling circus. Nothing weird was coming up for the first few sessions. Most of the other PCs either joined together by taking quests from the town job board or had ties built into their backstory. My first red flag should have been that the DM, despite constantly raving about all his planning, was frequently skipping around the story. He would suddenly decide the plot point we were on wasn't interesting enough for some reason and just throw us into another scenario. We left so many loose ends because he just didn't feel like finishing them, regardless of if we were engaging in it or not. But hey, he's the DM, right? That's what I thought. He had the right to change it. I had no prior experience to see that this was just bad DMing. We ended up joining an archery competition as we were tempted by the mystery grand prize. At the sign-up table, out of nowhere, the DMPC attending to registration suddenly starts flirting with my character. I got flustered in a negative way because this DM got very into character, giving me looks, leaning in as he spoke to me, the whole shebang. I panicked, all of a sudden being the focus of a full room of men, seeing how I'd react to it. I again stupidly went along with it. I had her nervously flirt back lightly, and I was relieved it didn't go much further at that point. Skipping to the end of the archery competition, my bard ended up in the final two and sabotaged an assassination on the town's mayor mid-competition. The party was invited to a celebration dinner at the mayor's house afterwards, where we once again ran into the NPC that flirted with my character at registration. He invited her to bed, and again I got extremely uncomfortable and flustered. None of this was discussed beforehand, nor was I even asked if I was comfortable with such topics before joining the campaign. The guys at the table were egging me on, and I felt pressured to accept. With a few hoots and hollers, we had a fade to black scene, thank God. I went home feeling very icky, but convinced myself that I was being a wimp. And the table had enjoyed my antics that night, so I should be grateful. I had the thought between sessions to write in childhood friends to lovers interest for my bard, and to try and avoid any more unexpected encounters like that again. Thinking if the DM had another character to play as with some personal tie to my bard, that would make me feel better about the interactions. He was brought up once where I milked the out of my character's attachment to him, hoping to drive home that this was juicy potential relationship to build over the campaign. He never came up again during the campaign. DM also completely disregarded many of the notes I gave him detailing this love interest's personality and took many creative liberties with him, but not enough where I would decide to say something. Another few sessions happened where we struggled through the DM's inconsistent storytelling and jumping around to whatever plot point had his interest at the moment. He was constantly putting us in fights we could not hope to win, way too challenging for our level. 1 to 3 party, we often sat around a table in disappointment and defeat as we got absolutely destroyed by monsters. No one being able to land hits, sometimes 3 or 4 rounds at a time because of how high the AC or the CR was. While the DM laughed and basked in the dreary nature of the battle at the table. He would usually eventually fudge rolls to give us an out when we were too close to TPKs. He gave us a deck of many things and insisted our PCs felt compelled to pull cards despite the players disagreeing that they wanted to. He attempted to force my character to drastically change her alignment to an evil one for shits and giggles because of 1 card pull. Later allowed me to ignore it because I didn't even want to use the deck. And got 3 of us killed by having them pull a card that summoned the highest CR monster you could use. One night he texts the group chat that he's decided he's done running that story and wants to run another one-shot instead. We had one last session to close that first campaign and discuss the one-shot options. During our meeting, he gleefully admitted to me that he had planned for my bard to get pregnant in that one-night stand with the NPC from the archery competition. Not only did he plan to do that without consent or knowledge, he had planned for it to be a hag baby, and it would have entirely effed up my PC. He explained it as the man having been a witch in disguise or something, and said that's how hags are made, which to my knowledge isn't entirely incorrect. Maybe it was a homebrew rule, but regardless, I was mortified. And now, very grateful, he lost interest in that campaign. Moving on to the next one-shot, another player decided to try DMing, and so the problem DM had a chance to make a PC. Yay! He privately messaged me and asked if I'd be interested in connecting our characters and their backstories. I said yes, and we got to work. We spent a few nights discussing their dynamic, and I was really excited to go into the game. Well, come night of the session, we were going around the table, introducing our characters. The problem DM went before me and introduced an entirely different character than the one we discussed, and one that would often almost kill us during the one-shot, to which the guy would cackle and mock us for getting upset. I asked him what happened to our plan, and he said earlier that day he decided he wanted to do something different. I sighed and let it go, because at least it was just a one-shot and my character could still function without the connection to any other PC. Another one-shot where the problem DM got to be a PC. He seemed to make his goal to be the biggest asshole to everyone's character. My PC was an archaeologist, and when she excitedly discovered some old pottery in a dungeon, he had his PC run up and smash everything and laugh in her face. This guy's an asshole. The next campaign we tried had several issues. Was the Starfinder campaign. I want to try a Starfinder campaign one day. Our party was considered as its own crew for a spaceship, plus 1 DMPC that was placed into the mix supposedly to help us if we fell short. Since we were all unfamiliar with Starfinder and spaceship battle mechanics, she was honestly a really cool character. And we had 1 or 2 sessions to establish the story and how the crew interacted. Now, this was my mistake. Not taking any of the other creepy habits of the DM into consideration, but I offhandedly mentioned to the table at large that my PC, a woman, might be developing a crush on this DMPC, also a woman. They had gone through a lot together in-game, and at this point, it felt natural. The next session, you'll never guess, the DMPC started flirting hardcore with my character. I was confused and asked the DM what that was about, and he had never had any interactions between those two that would read as romantic. Even I mentioned the character was crushing, she had never let it on, and the DMPC had never indicated she felt similar pull as well. The DM didn't really have an explanation, just that apparently in-universe the DMPC had been flirting more and more with my character since their last adventure together alone. I thought, okay, I guess. Honestly, what transpired would have been an insanely cool plot twist if we had had the time to actually roleplay and develop the relationship between the character and the DMPC, as well as the crew at large and the DMPC. She ended up being part of a cult that wanted to steal an artifact we had acquired. She was apparently trying to romance my PC because the PC was one who often guarded the artifact and needed to let her guard down. It would have been super impactful betrayal, but it was literally only a handful of sessions between my first meeting and the plot twist. We just had to trust the DM's word that we had all gotten super attached to her between actual session meetings, and we all should feel like we were stabbed in the back by this trusted individual. And I especially should feel heartbroken because she never really was interested in me anyway. Later on down the line, despite some very interesting story points, it got creepy again. Our PCs ended up being sucked into a death game show and isolated from the outside world while being broadcast to Universal TV stations. At some point, we were all given access to the internet after a few weeks of isolation to search up anything we wanted. Everyone searched up their names among other things. The DM described us finding our newly formed fan bases. He described other PC fan bases, men played by men, as having hot debates on their intelligence and decisions during the show, or bets on if they'd be the last one standing, that sort of stuff. He described my fan base as leering creeps saying the most unhinged things about what they wanted my PC to do to them sexually, as well as some spreading photos of my PC without covering her face. She was Casa, which canonically keep their mouths covered, but she had been forced to remove it briefly when it almost waterboarded her after she fell into a river. Eventually, we weren't able to meet consistently enough to warrant running campaigns anymore, and I fell out of touch with all involved. Oh, we also lost a player at some point right after he confessed to me and I declined his interest. Okay then. I went another year not playing before another friend group of mine invited me to play as a guest character. I thought this would be a nice way to ease back into the game slowly after my horrid experiences before. Rather than make an entirely new character for 1 or 2 sessions, I brought back my tiefling bard because I still really liked her character and had started to reshape her personality without being pressured to be a sexual chess piece. The new DM dropped my character in a labyrinth, and the current party had been trapped for a while. I was made a level or 2 higher and be an ally they encountered to help them escape. We did it. It was fun. I was only there as a guest and had only planned my character to be 1 or 2 sessions before leaving. I was consistently mentioning to the party that my PC would be leaving as soon as they get to the major city. But either they didn't think I was serious or didn't remember. I may have been convinced to come on full time, but unfortunately, history repeats itself. We got to a session where the party got to a tavern and drowned their sorrows and nursed their labyrinth bruises with beer, and the idea of a threesome was thrown in the air between my PC and 2 others. Now, half of this group were dating someone else in the group and seemed very comfortable role-playing casual sex between their PCs because of it. They started a damn chant pressuring me to say yes, already trying to roleplay it, and I felt sick. I was too anxious at the idea of saying no with how aggressive everyone was for me to agree, so I tried to roll for yes or no as an out. The dice failed me, and it rolled a number assigned to yes. I was very quiet for the rest of the session, and afterwards messaged DM that I wanted my character to leave at the beginning of the next session. The DM then tried to convince me to stay, despite me saying a clear no multiple times within the same conversation. They begged me to stay, saying that the party loved my PC a lot, and they would hate to lose me. When they finally relented, they then tried to smoothly transition to talking of making me a new character so I could permanently stay with the party, without compromising my bard story and decision. I kind of got on their case about that and told them to stop pressuring me, and I did not want to play with that group anymore. Eventually they gave up, but not without some low-key guilt tripping. I tried playing with one more group after this, and while it didn't get creepy, it was also a disappointment as none of the players seemed to care besides me and the DM. Despite everyone having encouraged starting the game because they want to learn how to play for the first time, players slowly started ghosting us. Drama happened between 2 players, joined just to have an excuse to talk, try and date, which ended up very messy when they both left, and the new players would get angry at me or the DM if they got confused with the rules or combat dynamics. The wizard rushed ahead of me, the tank barbarian, and acted like it was my fault when they nearly got killed in the first round because the tank is supposed to protect the damage dealers. That's video game logic, but anyway. The DM and I stayed in contact after all the other players ghosted the chat and ended up bringing over some new players who had also played before and rehauled the campaign. This one had so much problems, then quarantine hit and we couldn't keep up with regular meetings. At this point, with all my games ending, creeps, messy player dynamics were falling through, I decided maybe these kinds of games weren't for me. I have new friends now inviting me to play who have very functional groups, experienced professional DMs, close-knit friend groups, long-running campaigns, but I'm too wary to accept any more offers for games despite deep down really wanting to try again and be part of something I know can be amazing. Maybe I will one day, but until then, I just have these horror stories to think about. I can run through this a little bit and have some advice for this person. My biggest piece of advice is start your own group and start running your own campaign. It seems like you're joining a bunch of groups and everything just keeps getting really fucky because of the DMs and the players. And obviously having not discussed things in a session 0 where you're just joining in the middle of a random campaign. Run your own game and discuss these things in session 0. One from a dungeon master. I don't want to play with some of my friends and I don't know how to tell them. TLDR, how do I explain to my close-knit group of friends that I'm simply prioritizing my own enjoyment of the act of playing D&D as I too have the right of having fun even though I'm the DM, by only inviting the few ones of them I believe are compatible with my playstyle without being misunderstood as an asshole. Is this kind of like TLDR, am I the asshole? Is that what that is? I have a close-knit group of friends, and they are, like me, a bunch of nerds. Years ago, I convinced them to play D&D in a homebrew campaign. It went relatively well, on its first iteration at least. We had many problems that caused the absolute downfall of that campaign, and amongst one of them was how, despite their absolute love for the world I built and the story I'd created, they disliked my DMing style. I was a beginner TTRPG GM at the time, though I had played narrative games of make-believe for 10 years before I even knew what D&D even was in high school, with some of the friends of this group. They disliked RPG systems as a whole, believing only narration and dialogue were enough for TTRPG. Basically, they disliked everything about TTRPGs. Silly voices, no. Shopping, traveling, and overall social life RP. Basically anything that wasn't a high-stakes, politically engaged narrative where everything should be taken seriously. Battle maps and VTTs, absolutely not. And they were very vocal about it, being brutally honest with their opinions and feedbacks, regardless of, well, how I felt about them. Lomao. Yeah, when people are this vocal against things, they're usually slightly unhinged. Alright, now, these being my absolute best friends, I made a lot of concessions to accommodate their wants and needs so they could enjoy the game, including me and other players sitting down and basically redesigning the entire game based on what the group would enjoy. But it was never, truly never enough, to the point that just thinking about playing gave me anxiety. The game eventually fell apart for good, and I kind of swore not to play on that world. The one thing everyone enjoyed because I was starting to get sick of it, and I did not want to throw it away. Since then, we've played many other campaigns, as some of them really fell in love with TTRPGs, even becoming a Discord mod for a server dedicated to it. And we all continued world building and enriching the lore and everything of that world to the point of it being not just mine anymore, but the group's. The true problem begins when they asked me to play in it again. This happened right when Baldur's Gate 3 launched and everyone was playing it, and as I mentioned, missing playing TTRPGs with them. They said they missed it too, and would love to hop back into their old characters and finish the story. I reminded them that I was still afraid of running the game again, since it brought me so much stress. They asked me to play that campaign, and I was convinced. However, I put my foot down and said, I will only run that game or games in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Good old 5e, with all its rules, spell slots, prepared spells and everything. I would still facilitate much of the process for them to play as frictionless as possible. I would build their character sheets, I would keep track of their stuff alongside them, I would allow them to play their stupid, completely broken-ass homebrews they found in the deepest ass crack of dndwiki.com shit. I would even adapt game mechanics to play like they do in Baldur's Gate 3, but they would still be required to read the books, know the rules and stuff, and you guessed it, they agreed, but in the end, it still wasn't fracking enough. Yeah. This week, in a casual world-building Discord call, I asked one of my players, codenamed Tom, feedback on his sheet that I made, mind you, and asked, hey, due to your character's lore, and since we're rebooting the whole thing, do you think she would fit a paladin better, or are you okay with a zealot barbarian? And out of freaking nowhere, he begins a philosophical rant about how relying on a system to play an RPG is a sign of a bad end setting, how systems are the least important thing to playing a narrative game, how this is why he never plays spellcasters and only likes warriors and barbarians because they don't need to look down at their sheets and only their lore matter, and a lot of yapping nonsense like that, to the point where he kind of rubbed in my face that this campaign, ultra high political fantasy wargame where players are members of the Senate, prime ministers, etc., which was highly enjoyed by everyone else, was more successful than mine because of it. This pissed me off. This pissed me off because the campaign ultimately failed because IRL drama between players, and he knows this more than anyone else except maybe the ones involved in it. Like a poor Greek maiden suddenly given by Apollo the gift of prophecy about honestly, disrespect made me see the future of what running this shit was going to be, and I have decided to pull the plug. This is not what I need advice for, because even a deaf man could hear the car crash this should be from a mile away. Like Tommy, there are other players that are highly problematic in this group, but there are ones that seem to really be interested. Would I be wrong to invite these players? And how would I do it? This is a group of close friends, but like, I feel like I'm the dismissible one. Yeah, okay. So I would say, oh, here we go. Here's a response that I already agree with because I read like 3 bullet points out of this. Nah, F that. I'm gonna rant. You do not know them any explanation whatsoever. You were running a game of a certain social contract and they told you adamantly that they didn't want that. They said no to you, not the other way around. What more explanation do they need? The DM is not the player's slave. The DM is a human being with boundaries. The DM has just as much right to have fun as the players. It is the player's job to make the game fun for each other and for the DM. The DM's job is to prepare playable content and improvise the outcomes of the PC's actions in a believable way. The DM has very little control over whether the game is fun compared to the players. Team players make it fun, and one bad apple will spoil the campaign. If you want to DM a certain kind of game, then that is the game you're running, and anyone wants to join accepts on those terms. If they want to play something else, then go find it. You don't need them. You can easily find cool people who are down to play a regular 5e game and nobody's holding their gun to their heads. If they are intent on twisting things and branding you as an asshole for deciding what kind of D&D you want to run and get mad when they aren't invited because they said they didn't want to play that kind of game, then they will do however much mental gymnastics it takes to protect their egos no matter what you say. It should be a wake-up call for them if they're dicks about it instead. Then they are not your friends. In fact, they sound too selfish to be anyone's friend. I agree. Big time. Big agree. Yeah, screw those people, man.